Okay, so today we are going to finish off, basically, for the most part, for all intents and purposes, we are going to finish off the account of David. We are going to finish reading everything about him in 2 Samuel and 1 Chronicles, and the only the only little bit of information left about David will be at the beginning of 1 Kings, which we're not going to get into today. Anyway, so now at the end of 2 Samuel, chapter 24, there is a story, a chapter, about something David did and consequences that he faced for it that are recorded for us in 2 Samuel. And we had the same account given at the end of 1 Chronicles, but 1 Chronicles goes on to go into much more detail about the fallout from this event. For some reason, the writer of 2 Samuel, or the compiler, whoever took this information and compiled it into the form that we have now, did not see it necessary to include all the information about what happened after the events recorded in 2 Samuel 24 were over. So later on, centuries later, the chronicler who wrote 1 Chronicles gave us the rest of that story. There we go. I'm centered now. I think I am. Actually, no, I'm not. Oh well. Anyway, so we're going to read the same account, basically, as far as the beginning of it goes, with slight differences, and one of the differences is right here at the very beginning, so we'll talk about that when we get there. But we're going to be reading a lot more about the aftermath or the fallout of this event in 1 Chronicles than we do in 2 Samuel. Now remember, generally speaking, we've mentioned over and over and over again how the Bible narratives, the Bible itself, and the narratives written in it, are not that concerned about time. They're not that concerned about chronology. They're not that concerned about telling us when things happened or what order things happened in. That is not a priority for the Bible writers. It just isn't. It would probably be saying too much to say that they didn't care about it at all. Okay, it's I think that would be saying too much. But it was not a priority. It was very low on their list of priorities. It was not. I don't think it'd be fair to say it was something they didn't care about at all. But it is not something that they cared about too much. It is not. They did not take efforts to arrange their material in chronological sequencing. They did not take efforts to connect all the events sequentially to each other. They just didn't. Okay, it was not. That was just not a priority of theirs. So we read. So this is the last chapter of 2 Samuel. This is the last account of David written in what we call 2 Samuel. We'd already read some time ago now, actually, a bunch of other things in the last few chapters, chapters 21 and following of 2 Samuel, a random collection of other stories that took place sometime during the time of David. We read in 2 Samuel 21 about the Gibeonites wanting to avenge themselves on the male family descendants of Saul, and it says in chapter 21, verse 1, during the reign of David. So sometime during the reign of David. Then we skip through that. We read about a bunch of different battles with the Philistines. It says in verse 15, chapter 21, once again there was a battle with the Philistines. A few verses later, in the course of time, there was another battle. A few verses later, another battle, and so on. So it's it doesn't attempt to identify when these battles happen. I'm assuming chapter 21, verses 15 through the end of the chapter, that section about the battle of the Philistines, I'm assuming these four fights happened in order relative to each other. I'm assuming that. But the writer is not even attempting to connect them to when they actually happened in David's life or in David's reign. Okay, and that's just, and even in the sequence of events in the bulk of 2 Samuel, which basically are chronological. We do see him go from still an outcast, to the fall of Saul and his house, and then David becomes king in Hebron and wins a civil conflict with Ishbosheth and becomes king of all of Israel and reaches the height of his power. Then he has his fall with, his decline, his fall. He goes into war with Ammon and then sits home during the warring season, has this incident with Bathsheba and the fallout from that, which results in the war in his own house. So we do see a relative sequencing of events here. But even within that, it's hard to say exactly when all these things were occurring in relation to each other or in relation to these other accounts we have in 2 Samuel, which would have fit in that timeline somewhere. Who knows where. So, I say all this to emphasize that we really don't know when this account here in 2 Samuel 24 happened. I think it's very likely that it happened after 2 Samuel 7, which is when David's at the peak of his power and is thinking about building a temple for God, and we have that account, and God makes that covenant with David that he's going to have a man on the throne forever. He's not going to build a temple, but his son will, and all that, and kind of we talked about, and we read the kind of First Chronicles, which was still keeping that promise intact even hundreds of years later after the David dynasty is not sitting. At the time the chronicler was living, there was not a king, a son of David reigning as king in the throne of Judah or Israel. So the chronicler has to explain how these promises to David can still be active in his own time, even though there is actually no king from the line of David sitting on the throne of Judah in Jerusalem. So we read about that. This is probably taking place after that. Okay, I think we can be confident that this whole census business and the fallout from that is taking place after that. But as far as dating it any more precisely than that, I don't know when. Is this after Absalom's rebellion? Is this during that time? I don't know. Is it after the Bathsheba incident? I don't know. I really don't. I think it might have been early enough, as we'll read in First Chronicles. David spent a lot of time in the second half of his reign thinking about this temple. He never built it. He wanted to, but he didn't get the chance to. But he did go to a lot of effort to prepare it to be built for his son. I mean, he did everything he possibly could rather than hammer the stones together himself. He got all the materials. He got he drew up all the blueprints, all the plans. He designed the order of service they were going to follow in the temple. I mean, he did everything he possibly could rather than sort of outright building it himself. And I would imagine that would have taken a great deal of his attention in the second half of his reign. And I think possibly explains why he seems to have become somewhat withdrawn and detached from the people during we read about the Absalom civil war. Absalom was able to win the hearts of the people largely because David was absent. We read in 1 Kings, which we're not going to get to today, but next time we get together, we read in 1 Kings about David being kind of withdrawn and shut in and impotent and kind of being an old man kind of off by himself near the end of his reign. So I tend to think, it seems like David was kind of withdrawn in the second half of his reign. Some of it may have been because of his diminished reputation after the Bathsheba incident and the fallout from that. But I also think some of it may be because he was busying himself with these plans for this temple, and that was his priority in the second half of his reign. And so therefore he was less concerned about getting involved in the affairs of the daily lives of the citizens as he may have been before. Anyway, I don't know. That's my speculation. But I tend to think this is probably happening before, I don't know. It's hard to say whether it's before or after the Bathsheba incident, but I'm thinking that this would have started before the infighting in his own house that took, we read about the timeline, because we did get a timeline there. The Bible writer of 2 Samuel did see fit to include yearly time frames about how many years apart some of these things were happening. So we could see that this incident, this growing hostility between David and Absalom had been going on for like a decade plus. I'm thinking that this military census would have been probably before that, and then the aftermath of it would have lasted throughout the rest of David's reign. But anyway, here we go. Yeah, let's go ahead. You know what? It's 10 minutes into this video. Let's go ahead and just we'll go ahead and just start a new video.